I've never been to a Chicago Wolves game, but I met a former teammate of yours for lunch today, Ray Ferraro, and
Oh yeah,
he was saying that the rink you guys play in is pretty cool.
it's my memories of Chicago Wolves are I hated them.
Really?
I was with Houston for 6 years, and they were always a competitive team. I played 2 years against them when I was my last 2 years of playing in Orlando, and
Yeah.
so they were always a competitive team, and they were always, great building, very confident team, cocky team. So that's why I hated them for all the right reasons, not because I didn't respect them, it's because I respected them, and they were a great competition.
And so this season, you guys aren't affiliated with anybody. So do you have your group in camp right now?
Yeah, yeah, we're starting officially on Sunday,
Okay.
and but right now we're skating kind of unofficially. We had I think 5 players in NHL camps. Two got returned, today, and so we have three out in NHL camps as tryouts. So what we think we'll get them back, but you never know. You never know. So.
So just going back in preparation for this, looking at old interviews, you did a presentation for us and on what systems to use with your team, and you referenced the importance of selling the system to your players. And then just looking back at old press conferences that you've had, that term seems to come up a lot. It's not like we played good defense, like we had to sell the players on playing good defense. When you get into camp, what are the key things that you're going to want to sell your players on?
Well, the belief that what we're doing is the right thing, the systems that we're doing, the attitude that we play with, whether it's passive, aggressive, uh, very offensive, very defensive, you want them to believe that whatever systems, whatever philosophies that we're using are going to help us win. Everybody wants to win. Individually, you want to win and do well yourself, contribute to the team. So, the big thing for Bob Nardella, who's the head coach, and myself is we want the guys to believe in that what we're selling them, what we're asking them to do is going to work.
You mentioned defense versus offense. Do you think can a team's identity be both, or do you have to go in as a coach and say, hey, we're going to sort of lean one way or the other in terms of, the attitude and makeup of our team?
It's a great question, and it's a tough question. Yeah, I think a great question is always a tough question to answer.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I don't know how you can win if you don't defend.
Yeah.
So our angle is going to be if you defend, position yourself properly in the offensive zone, you're going to get the puck back. You're going to have offensive opportunities. If you work, say, tracking, back checking hard through the neutral zone, you might turn pucks over. You might make them dump the puck poorly, but you're going to probably have a better chance of getting the puck back as opposed to you meandering back into your own zone. So we want. That's just the way I am. Bob's the same way as me, where we want our guys to be, very proud of the fact that we are defending first because we want to be in the offensive zone. Where do you want to play? Do you want to play in the defensive zone? Well, then don't work very hard. Don't compete. Don't work above. Don't finish your check. Don't have a good stick. If you want to play in the defensive zone, those are great attributes to have to play in the defensive zone. Nobody wants to play there. Everybody wants to play in the offensive zone. It's easier. Once you get it there, there's not quite as much work. It seems to be easier. You don't really get tired in the offensive zone. You get tired doing all the other things, defending and working in your own zone. So that's selling the game for me, anyways.
So when you're building those layers, if we were to come out to one of your practices, where do those habits or those defensive habits or defensive details start? Is it small parts, say one-on-one, or is it starting in the offensive zone and how you work back to your zone? Where do you begin at the start of the season?
We were just talking about that today and looking at video on that today. Like, where do we start?
Yeah.
Um, and we have Bob pulled up a bunch of video of us working in the defensive zone, like a term work above. Typically, working above is when you're in the offensive zone and the puck's kind of 50-50. Both teams could have it, as opposed to maybe standing on the goal line and hoping the puck goes down the wall,
Yeah.
to the goal line where you're standing. You could work above, work above. So worst case, we have somebody above the puck. We get the puck. We win that that 50-50 battle. We have somebody in position that's good defensively, and at the same time, they're in a good offensive position as well. So that's a big part of it is your system. So we're gonna show two, and I think most coaches do this. So they'll show whatever they deem to be their most important systems, D zone coverage tracking,
Yeah.
forecheck, whatever you deem to be your most important. They're probably going to show those in the first 2 or 3 days on video, and then you go work on it, walk through it, and practice, just so everybody kind of, somewhat has the same system. It's a lot of times it's the details that are a little bit different.
For sure.
And so that's what you're working on in practice. Show it in video, go and practice, work on it. Hopefully you can make good drills out of it where it's an active, and at the same time the players are feeling what they're doing, feeling the ice, feeling how they support, say it's a forecheck, F1 in the forecheck, how are we supposed to support that? F2, F3, weak side D in a pinch, who's working above. You go out and practice it.
Well, I'm always interested, and I can appreciate in pro hockey, you're so limited on practice time. So I would imagine when you get into a training camp environment where you can get a couple days in a row, I mean, that's got to be gold as a coach. How do you balance that, those walkthroughs, those system type drills with, hey, we got to get our feet moving, we got to get the puck moving? How do you package that in training camp in terms of maybe the ratio of what type of drills you're doing?
Everybody's a little bit different with that too. But a lot of times what you could do is your first drill of the day could be a walkthrough. Say it's on the forecheck. You could have one or two coaches working on one end, one or two coaches working at the other end. One side has five players, maybe two defensemen breaking out and three forwards on the forecheck with D following up. So you can do it in different ways, but you could do it at 70% pace.
Yeah.
So you're not going a million miles an hour. It's kind of a controlled walkthrough, feeling the positions. When the puck, again using forecheck, say the puck goes from one corner to another, the defenseman has moved it from his corner behind the net to the defenseman on the other side. What are we supposed to do? What are our routes? And then you talk about F1, who was in on the forecheck. He finished off the defenseman who moved it. F3, who's on the weak side, he's diving down to that defenseman who's got it, and you have F2 who's on the strong side wall or in the dot lane. He's working above above a defenseman who could be pinching if the puck goes around to the wing. Hope everybody can picture that.
No, that's great.
But I
Yeah.
mean it's a walkthrough at 67. It's almost like a warm up too. It's a warm
Yeah.
up for the players. Sometimes these things are lousy for goalies. The goalies are standing in there for 5 or 10 minutes going, okay, well, what's going on here? What am I doing?
Yeah.
How am I involved in all this stuff? But it's the way it works. So with everything, you kind of have an idea of the pace that you're playing at. So you have a walkthrough forecheck, then maybe have a walkthrough breakout, and then you get into some pace. And then maybe later on in practice, your fourth or fifth or sixth drill, you've got an active forecheck. So
Yeah.
you play. Here's our forecheck. Let's set it up. Let's try to work it, make it work. and then let's play. So you let them play for 20 seconds. If there was mistakes made, maybe you talk about it. Really, it just depends where you're at in your season. But these are the moments in training camp where you have the time and ability to maybe make the players work. But number one is you want the systems done right. But in a game, they have to be done quickly
Yeah,
with a lot of pace and a lot of physicality in a game. You're not going to get that here, but you can get the pace anyways once you kind of get into doing those drills a little bit more live than walkthrough.
that's great. That makes a lot of sense. You're coming off 2 years coaching in Vienna. Um, what is in your coaching toolbox today that you're bringing over from that experience that you can lend to the Chicago Wolves? What's new?
It was I'm in a different role.
Yeah,
I'm an assistant coach here with Bob Nardella,
yeah,
um, but there's kind of only two of us.
yeah,
So there's lots of responsibility, and he's open. He knows what he wants, but he's open to listening to my thoughts, my viewpoints. Sometimes he says, "Hey, that's perfect. We'll do it." Sometimes he's like, I might want to lean the other direction or go with this." So that's obviously up to him. He's the head coach, but um, I think I can really help him. I think the 5-on-5 side. I was an assistant coach in the NHL prior to that, and you have your definite responsibilities as penalty kill or power play,
yeah.
running the defense, working with the forwards. You have responsibilities. Uh, so a lot of times you don't think like a head coach. Um, so I think I have thought like a head coach the last 2 years. All the problems that you're trying to rectify or correct.
Yeah.
You watch your video of games and go, our forecheck was lousy. I really liked what we did on our breakouts. Let's make sure we continue that. Um, so there's a lot of little things that I think I'll be able to help Bob with, and at the same time, being that there's just two of us, there's a lot of work to do. It's a lot to handle. So if you're going to do it right, we'll have to work well together with that.
That's great. I'm curious when you were over in Europe, if you get a day off in Vienna, what was on the agenda?
It depended when.
Yeah,
So hockey in Vienna, hockey in the Ice League, the Austrian league. I guess there's a few teams outside the Austrian league, but you'd have a lot of Friday games, Saturday games, Sunday games. So you play Friday, Sunday, very seldom back to back. Thursday, Saturday, just depending. So you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a lot of times are practice days. You have four in a row, give a guy's days off, maybe you have three. So if I was organized, I would take the subway from where I lived in Vienna to the downtown area, which is called District 1, and I'd walk around. I love exploring. I loved getting to see Vienna. Vienna is an incredible city.
no kidding. Yeah,
Lots to see and do. So I got out. There was also I'm a runner too, so I would make my way to some of the bigger hills in Vienna and go for runs there. So I got to see a lot of Vienna. I loved it. I really enjoyed it.
how I don't know if we necessarily get access to a lot of video from over there, but how does the pace change, and what is it that changes the pace? Because it always amazes me, like, now we get access to, say, Champions League hockey, and I mean, the game's played on frozen water. Granted, the ice is a little bit bigger, but is it a tactical thing? Is it a mindset thing? What is it that maybe slows the pace of the play down and puts the emphasis on puck possession?
The game is. I was a little bit surprised. The game is, it's a bigger ice surface, um, but the physicality is pretty familiar, pretty similar. I mean, with North America, I was a little surprised,
Really?
but each team there is allowed 10 imports. Imports are anybody who is not from Austria. So you
Yeah.
have your 10, 11, 12 Austrians, and you have your 10 imports. You don't have to have 10, but you're allowed to have 10. Typically, your imports are typically more skilled,
Yeah.
sometimes a little bit more physical. You might get a guy who's, a big, strong physical defenseman if you need it. But there's also some physical, strong Austrians. There's some skilled Austrians, so it's not like you're. But the difference between, and it's as you go up, junior hockey, college hockey, ECHL, American League, and then NHL. The difference typically is intelligence,
Yeah.
skill level, and and I don't want to say being a better worker, but that comes into play as well. And it's having a balance between. I think the biggest thing is the intelligence, hockey smarts, is the biggest difference as you go up the ladder or go down the ladder.
Well, I guess speaking of hockey smarts and skill, this is a really unique year in the NHL. The Calder race is going to be fascinating this year. I don't know if anybody would have greater insight as to who might be the lead horse in this race. So, you coach Canada's U18 team. Gosh, it would have been 2 years ago. These are just a couple names like Dylan Gunther, Shane Wright, Connor Bedard, Brant Clark. Um, any insights into how or what hockey fans might expect from some of these players this season?
Wow. It was neat because when I got the job, Dave, you want to be head coach of Canada's U21 or U18 team? I'm like, yes,
And it was right
yes.
before, was it not? Like, wasn't it? Didn't you get that gig? Like, you didn't have a lot of runway to prepare, if I recall.
No, and we couldn't. The players, for the most part, weren't really supposed to skate, but some guys are figuring ways to skate.
Yeah.
Um, we couldn't get together. We get all the way to Dallas. Everybody gets to Dallas kind of independently. If you're from Vancouver, you're flying from Vancouver to Dallas. You're getting to the hotel. You're going straight into your room. You stay in your room for
Wow.
4 days straight. So we had Zoom
Teenagers.
workouts. Teenagers, yeah, we had Zoom workouts for the first 4 days. So we're in Dallas. We haven't even skated yet. I really don't know the players that well. So we finally get the ability to skate. And I as soon as I got the job, I started looking at the players and I'm going, holy smokes, we
Yeah.
can score. We can score. We got 9, 10 guys who are 30, 40, 50 goal scorers in junior hockey or wherever they're coming from. They can score. So I knew we could score. So it was just, and we go back to what we talked about earlier, selling the game.
Yeah.
First thing I did, I just said, guys, we're going to score if we work at this, 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 and this. And I showed video and I tied it up. So throughout the whole tournament, every time I saw a clip where somebody did something defensive that turned into offense, I was showing it to the players. Keep doing this, and we're going to have success. We'll have a chance to win. But we were absolutely loaded. Shane Wright was our captain. Bedard. It's kind of. I got a real quick story about Bedard. So I get asked, Dave, you want to be head coach? Yes, I
Yeah.
do. A couple days later, the general manager of the team works for Hockey Canada, Alan Miller,
Yeah.
who's super smart, who I really surprised that he's not in the NHL at some capacity. Maybe he's turned down jobs, but he's a real bright guy. He says to me, he phones me up and he says, Dave, he goes, can you kind of make sure Bedard is insulated? He goes, I'm taking I'm under a little bit of pressure for putting a 15-year-old in a U18 tournament.
Because he
So
was
he
he
goes,
was
could
two
you help
years
him?
below. Is that right?
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 15.
Unbelievable.
Most of the players are 17. And 17, the size difference between a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old
Oh
can be
man.
6 inches.
Yeah.
It can be a big difference. So, he says to me, he goes, "Could you insulate him?" And I said, "Sure, no problem. I'll make sure I give him an opportunity to perform." So I put him in a good spot, and I'm watching him play, and I'm going, "Yeah, this kid doesn't need any insulation. He's
Yeah.
fine on his own. He doesn't need my help." So, but it was Dylan Gunther. I think he's going to be a star.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna be a star in the NHL. We have a lot of players. Wyatt Johnson. I had him on,
Yeah.
just kind of going into camp. I had him as my fourth line centerman, and he just kept working his way up the ladder. And I had, Mason
Oh
McTavish,
yeah, another one. Jeez.
who's he'll be a captain in, or he should be a captain, but there's some very good young players in Anaheim.
Yeah.
He'll be a leader and a top player in the NHL. One of those two-way guys who just he cares. He'll do whatever the coach asks him to do, and he's already got a lot of real good qualities besides that. Brant Clark, Oren Zellweger.
Oh my
Um,
God. Yeah.
we had just a ton of guys. Um, I can't remember everybody's name now. Rangers first round pick. Okay,
Oh,
I
from
can picture his
Brandon.
face, but I
From
can't.
Brandon.
Othman.
Okay.
No, Othman from. I think he ended up in Peterborough's last year, but
Got it.
we had a ton of very good players, and it was just a matter of us, playing as a team, and everybody bought in, and it worked out great. It was just a great experience.
I remember after you guys won gold and you had a conversation with Troy Ward with us, and you were sharing some of that experience. I remember watching that and thinking, man, like this is a 30 for 30 doc. Like it wasn't just the winning, it was the talent of all the players. It was the circumstance of COVID going up to Texas. Like it was just such a unique run. But I want to go back to something you said. You talked about the clips that you would show the players. They were keep doing this clips. Just from a teaching perspective, would that be sort of a tenet of your approach in the sense of saying we're going to show clips on what to do and maybe not focus so much on the clips of what not to do or players making mistakes?
Yeah, I think that's a little difference between junior hockey and say NHL hockey.
Sure.
Is in junior hockey, coaching there, I coached there 5 years. I found that if you showed, say, one individual player 10 clips of himself playing a game, and five of them, or I'll say seven, were positive and three were teaching clips, I found that players got cocky. Oh, they did. Got another one that I did great. Younger players got cocky
Yeah.
with it, and I'm being a little bit negative here. I don't mean to be negative, but
No.
they kind of couldn't balance the difference between the three. So I eventually ended up going the other way, and I would show them seven plays that they could have done better, but then I would finish it with three going, look at this here. Look at the difference between those three other ones in this same, whether it's forecheck or back check or whatever it might be. Look at the difference. Where in with NHL players, you show them doing something right, they want to do it again. They want to
That's
do
so
the
interesting.
correct thing.
Yeah.
They want to do the correct thing again. Where it's a big difference. So a lot, in the NHL, when I was showing clips to guys, you'd show five clips, and three of them are positive. You'd show the first two, hey, maybe remember last game, you did this, same idea. We'd like you to do this. And then I would show them a positive right after that. Go, look at the difference. Look at the difference between this, the one from 2 games ago, one from last game. That's what we need to do. Make that become a habit. Make that become a real good habit for you. So that's the difference there with showing clips. I find it's a lot better to show hard work, defensive, giving yourself up defensively, and then that turns into offense for us. Everybody wants to get goals. Everybody wants to
Yeah.
get assists. And how do you do that? Well, you gotta be willing to defend. If you don't defend, then you're gonna be chasing the puck all day.
For sure. For sure. Well, I'll tell you what. So speaking of video, I'll tell you about what I did last night. So getting ready for these conversations, I go back, I pull up, your Wikipedia page from our guests, elite prospects, find some articles, and then I'll go on YouTube because I can listen or watch some old press conferences, which I love to do, old interviews. So I get on YouTube and I punch in Dave Barr hockey, and I wasn't aware. I mean, the first thing that pops up, you and Wendell Clark. Next one. You enjoy. I had
That
no
was a
idea.
bad.
You
That
did
was a
not
bad one.
back down. I spent 30 minutes watching Dave Barr fight clips on YouTube. I had no idea. Like, man, you played with a lot of sandpaper, man. That was a tough era.
Yeah, it was, and not a lot of guys know that because if they didn't see me fight, and you just look at penalty minutes, I'm getting 47.
Yeah.
I'm getting 61. I'm getting, I didn't get a lot of minors. I never got minors. I got 5 minors a year. And a lot of times you just had to stand up for yourself. Like the Wendell Clark thing. I didn't want to fight him, but it was like the fifth time he'd done something to me in the game.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, I got to stand up to him. This is probably not going to turn out well, but I got to show him that I have some, self-respect. So I fought him, and oh yeah, he's a tough guy.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But you
No,
got to
fair enough.
stand up. You got to
Yeah.
stand up for yourself, and or you got to defend a teammate at the right time. So I hope I was one of those guys that that was respected and so forth. So we'll see.
No, absolutely. And I mean, what I was curious about too was that were you drafted?
No.
No, and I just we've it's funny, we've had just in the time that we've done the podcast, we've had a lot of NHL coaches that come on, and man, there seems to be something to be said for players that maybe had to take the long road or face a little bit of adversity, and maybe how that translates into coaching. And my theory might be that players who are in that circumstance maybe have to be super detail orientated and pay a bit more attention to aspects of the game that maybe players that are walking in with a bit more skill or a bit more of an open door, perhaps because they were a first round pick. But what was your path to the NHL, and what do you, Lynn, I guess in hindsight, what were some of the keys to you to getting through that, some of that adversity?
I think the best thing that happened to me is I got traded. I was in Portland. I played for a few teams in the WHL. I was good enough to play in the WHL, but anyway, so I get traded from Portland to Lethbridge, and in Portland I was third line guy, but I should have been a third line guy or a fourth line guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was my doing. I just didn't react well. As soon as I got to Lethbridge, I played very well. I played on the top lines. We had a lot of talent on our team. We had a tough team. And then that was I was 19 that year.
Yeah.
And the next year I came back as an overage, and we had three veteran defensemen go out with injuries, like 2 month injuries. So the coach
Yeah.
comes up to me and says, "Dave, you want to play defense?" And I
No
said,
way.
"Sure." So I played left defense. I'm a right shot. Played left D. I had, as a joke, I put Bobby Orr, like two strands
Come
on
on.
my blade,
That's
like
so
Bobby Orr
good.
did. As
Yeah.
I did it as a joke, and I'd be going by other teams' benches. They'd just be chirping, "Who do you think you are? Who do you think you're, Bobby Orr?" But it was the best thing for me. I was a good skater, and I had 80 something points that year, and the year before I had 50 as a forward. So as a defenseman, I played the whole year on defense.
No way. Wow.
I got a lot of points. Learned a lot. My coach was John Chapman, and he was wonderful. He challenged me. Um, he did a lot of neat things. Like back then, we had boxing practice where you literally would put boxing gloves on your hands on the ice. And then if he was mad at you for playing a certain way, he'd have you, he'd get the toughest guy in the team to go, "Okay, Dave, you're going to fight Mitch over there." And I'm like, "Gee, Christ." But he
Yeah.
challenged me to be more of a consistent player, more of a physical player, and it was the best thing for me. So I had a great year. I had 3 invites to go to NHL camps. I decided on Boston,
Yeah.
went to Boston's camp. I went to rookie camp. 70, I think there's 70 players went to rookie camp. 2 players made it from rookie camp. I was one of them.
Wow.
I went to rookie camp and I said, "This is it. This might be my only." I would not have really wanted to play against me because I was an absolute maniac. I was doing anything I could to, to get noticed. So I had a good rookie camp. Played one exhibition game for Boston. Scored a goal in the game. We won 1-0. And they signed me to a contract, $5,000 signing bonus, and I made $55,000 in the NHL and $17,500 to play in the American Hockey League. So that was my first contract.
Do, do, do you I'm sure, like, just in your time in the NHL, like, how many times have you maybe shared that story with a young player that maybe things aren't going his way? Like, that's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, they're talking about, oh, we're getting hammered with escrow. It's like, okay, I would take your escrow that you make in 1 year for a year's salary in the NHL. It's changed a lot,
For
but
sure.
we were at the time. I was very happy.
It,
Five thousand
it must
dollars.
have felt
That's
like a
like,
lottery ticket at that stage of life
oh,
for most 21
it
year olds.
was
Yeah.
it was really neat. I was very fortunate. Had some breaks at the right time. Had a great coach. Lou Angotti was my coach my first 2 years in the American League. I played mainly in the American League my first year. Um, Neat little things that happened to me that year. Ray Bork was, I think he was my age, I think, but he played as an underage for Boston. He was a superstar right off the bat. He came up to me. I remember my second year, I got called up to Boston. He comes up to me in practice and he says to me, he goes, "Dave," he goes, "I don't understand why you're not here full time. You're a great player." And that's one of those things. I think I got goosebumps when he said it to me. We were the same age, but he was a star already, and I'm
Yeah.
just a call up American leaguer. And it made such a difference that I kind of tried to take that forward with me as I became older, an older
Yeah.
player, a veteran player, a veteran NHL player. I tried to be, a guy that would, help somebody, become better. Give them some kind words maybe when they needed it. And we had so many good players that I played with that would do that for other players. It was something that stuck with me. That I still, I can remember the 10 times things like that happened when I was younger. When I was a younger player, where you got a pat in the back from a veteran guy, and it was like, wow, and it made you feel like you're making a difference. And I think sometimes that's the difference between a player making it
Yeah.
and not making it is, communication. I got traded to the Rangers in my third year. I got called up to the Rangers. I playing with Mike Rogers at center, who was a star at the time,
Yeah.
and I was playing with Don Maloney as he was
Okay.
on left wing. So essentially, I was on the first line playing right wing, and I didn't get a lot of communication from the coaching staff, and I kind of felt lost. I know I wasn't playing as well as I could have, and so when I became a coach, that was another thing that I tried to do, is I tried to be a guy that was making sure that player felt comfortable, making sure they understood that what he was doing was helping the team, hopefully helping them um, recognize what else they can do to improve their game. So a lot of these little things that I went through as a player, the good and the bad,
Yeah.
I tried to maybe not do or do as a coach.
You know, that's a great point. And when you have, as a coach, when you have those check-ins, like, is it always, hey, come into my office, sit down, we're going to watch video, or is there other ways that a coach can maybe send that message that the players appreciate it, or maybe, you know, in an informal way, share, here's some areas where you can improve.
For sure, and I think a lot of it is just, it's from a, not necessarily just from a hockey point of view.
Yeah.
It's from, hey, what'd you guys do last night for dinner? Like group of couple younger guys. What'd you guys do for dinner? Have some fun with them. Let them know that you care about them. I think that's really important, and it's got to be real. It can't be forced. It's got
Yeah.
to be real. And then from a hockey perspective, sometimes the players question, younger guys, even older guys. I remember going up to Joe Sakic my first year coaching in the NHL, and Joe, it ended up being his last year in the
Yeah.
NHL. And I go up to him and I say, "Hey, Joe, I'm going to be your coach. I'm be working on the penalty kill. I'm not gonna say anything to you about how to play offense." And he goes, "No, no, no. Whoa, stop right there, Dave." He goes, "No, you tell me
Really?
what you think I need to do offensively. Tell me, I need you to help me." And I kind of said, "Oh yeah, okay, sure, I appreciate that, Joe." I walked away and I kind of felt foolish because my job as the coach, whether it's an elite NHL player, superstar, or a regular Joe, my job is to give them information that helps them. And whether I think Joe was 35 or 6 that year, whether you're 35 or 36 and a star, confidence is what puts a lot of these guys over the top, that they think they have the ability to make that play. And they usually do is because they can make that play. But everybody always wants feedback, always
Yeah.
wants Brent Burns, coaching Brent Burns. He wanted feedback. You had to be really careful what you said to Brent because he really took it to heart. If you said, "Brent, like to see you do this or that," he would ask specifically, "Exactly, can you show me on video?" Something like that. He really cares about what he's bringing to the table.
That's so interesting. What might be some examples of when you're talking to a player about maybe areas that they can improve and maybe just more on the confidence side? Like, do you have any advice for coaches on how they might be able to um, teach or correct, but also ensure that that player leaves feeling that conversation or interaction, feeling, really good about their game and their ability?
Yeah, that's again a real good question because I think that's the most important thing when you have an individual meeting. Depending on who you're coaching, whether it's a 14-year-old or you're in the ECHL coaching a player, it almost doesn't matter. When you walk away from the meeting, you would hope that they feel better, that
Yeah.
they feel more informed, they understand what you're asking of them. Sometimes, in the heat of a battle, everybody has, as a hockey player, everybody kind of sees the ice differently.
Yeah.
The elite guys, they're kind of seeing, 180, 190 degrees sometimes.
Yeah. That's a great
Where
way to,
us,
yeah. Yeah.
where us, or some of us guys are like this too.
I
So
was more of
it's
a
everybody.
telescope, I think. Yeah.
I had two telescopes. um, but it really you want them when you walk away to feel good, but at the same time know, okay, I need to work on my foot speed, and here's a drill that I can work with Dave Barr on after practice. He's going to grab me, he's going to work with me on my foot speed, he's going to work with me on getting my head up in practice. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is the guys who have the ability, and I know it's not easy, but we can all get better, the ability to see the ice. If you can play like this, looking around like this, as opposed to playing like this, it's kind of obvious. You don't know where your teammates are. I think that's one thing that's probably uh, the most, one of the best things to work on.
So it's so funny you mention, um, the awareness, being able to see the ice. And I know we went over to, at the World Championships, they do a coaching symposium, and we sponsored it last year. So we were over in Finland, and the word that we kept hearing was scanning. And so they brought in a gentleman to present who was really involved with soccer. He was a university professor, but worked a lot in the Premier League. And man, he showed some clips. And I mean, granted, soccer is different because it's a bit of a slower pace. But I remember he showed like a clip of Lionel Messi. And Lionel Messi, might as well have been having a milkshake during the game. But he's watching, his head's going nonstop. And then all of a sudden, the ball comes to him and he makes a play instantly, to somebody that's wide open. And then he immediately goes to open space and gets the ball back and scores. And, I just, seeing that, and, really has changed the way, you watch the game, particularly how you watch individual players and maybe how they're playing the games with their eyes. Any advice on how you can work with players to maybe improve that? Because, I'm in a position now where I'm coaching my son's U7 team. And one thing I've noticed is that the thing we do at that level is we put pylons on the ice, which is great. But when we do that, these kids learn to play the game with their head down because all they watch is the pylons. So we've tried to take the pylons off the ice. But I, selfishly mostly, but also for anybody listening, any advice on how we can help players play the game with their head up and just overall develop awareness?
It's not easy, but it's doable for
Yeah,
sure. I mean, the biggest thing I do, doesn't matter who I'm working with, NHL players, American League players, junior players, U18 players. I mean, you have different levels of skill with everybody. We had practice today. I'm in Chicago right now.
yeah,
Light skates, if you want to call it that, with the Chicago Wolves. We have some guys on tryouts. There's players under contract here, and I'm watching them. And so we had a scrimmage at the end. The reason why I bring this up is I'm watching, and you can see that some guys can see, can see the ice, just
yeah,
like we were talking about. So all you do really is you put the players in situations where you're asking them to get their head up. So say you're a real simple drill, puck in the corner, passing it to a D, and you're asking him to maybe walk it to the middle or walk it 10 or 15 feet, get him to do it every single time with his head up.
yeah.
If you lose the puck, no problem, try it again. Lose the
It's
puck,
great
no
advice.
problem,
Yeah.
try it again. Like, get them to challenge it. I was working in Buffalo. A friend of mine was working with the Niagara Ice Dogs.
Okay.
And he said, Dave, would you mind coming by? It's, 45 minutes away. So I came by, and he said, I went on the ice with him, and I asked the defenseman, I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to drag it to the face-off dot and bring it back without putting your head down, not one time. And so it was fun because as soon as somebody put a head down, I blew it down, and they were done. They had to start from scratch, and there's a lot of peer pressure. Guys are laughing at them. So the guys took it real seriously, and I mean, I don't know percentage wise how much they improved, but they were so much better after 5 minutes. So these are, junior kids, 16, 17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
But they improved so much. It was amazing just in that, 5 minutes, I think, that we did the drill for. So it's what you ask of them. It's what you ask of players.
Love that.
You can do so many skill drills, or skill, you can develop so many skills within drills that you're already doing. It's what you ask of them, with it. So playing with your head up, how do you do that? Well, you just got to get the guys to play with their head up. I think the cones are fine. I do a drill with pucks
Yeah.
where I put two lines of pucks about 5 feet apart, and I ask players, and cones would probably be better, or even those little donuts that you put on the ice, those little orange discs, almost
Yes.
like a frisbee.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put those on the ice, and then you stick handle through the middle, and you're putting your hands. Use my hands here. You're putting your hands out to the side, bringing the puck across the other side, going around the cone or whatever you have there. I do, and then I say, okay, don't lift your head up or don't put your head down, and they can do it.
Yeah.
They can do it. So they're doing it just by peripheral. So I
Sure.
ask them to look ahead, and you can maybe do this. How many fingers? How many fingers?
Yeah.
And then so they're having to do this at the same time. They're going one, two, two, one fingers. They're looking up. So it can be done, but and then you try to do it with pace. So you do that. You can go fairly slow, keep your head up, not a race, get it done right, and then you go a little faster now, a little faster now. So then you just pick the pace up, try to make it game-like. So within all the drills that you're already doing, ask the kids to play with their heads up.
And I just want to point this out. Like when you're talking about, starting it out slow and then increasing the pace. I mean, your experience predominantly is working with the best players in the world. So if it works for those players, I think just a great, message for those coaches coaching young players that don't be afraid to slow it down, master the fundamentals, and then obviously build on it from there.
For sure. I mean, I like anything. Like if you lift weights, it's not about that you do 12 reps incorrectly. It's about doing the correct number or the whatever the number of reps correctly. It's
Yeah,
about doing it the right way. It's not about how fast you do it. It's about doing it the right way. And then ultimately, you'd like to be able to do it the right way as fast as you can. You know what I mean? So you're
totally.
playing with pace. You're doing things. You're pulling pucks. Worked in when I was assistant coach in Minnesota. Mikko Koivu,
Okay.
average skater,
Yeah.
average skater, incredible. He would pull the puck. I've never seen a guy do it faster. 10, 12 feet. So he'd have he had long arms, about 6'3".
Yeah.
He'd pull it from here to here in about a quarter second it felt like anyways.
Yeah.
And it was like in trouble, boom, gone, away from trouble. You know what I mean? And then because he was an average skater, but that was one of his skills was his puck protection in his own way of keeping that puck away from you. And so that's an easy drill to do. It's just that pulling the puck side back and forth with your head up. You don't even have to be moving, but just getting players to go through it and have it become a habit where they can play with their head up, or at least maybe not all the way up, but at least a little higher.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. How did you first get involved in coaching? Because I believe it was with you in Orlando as a player coach. What I would also point out would appear to be another great thing to have on your resume if you want to be a career coach, is to at some point be a player coach. Is something I've come to appreciate. Were you thrown into that environment, or was that something where you said, I know this is the path I want to go down to, and that seemed like the obvious transition?
Jacques Demers, I played for Jacques for I think 6 or 7 years
No way.
in St. Louis and Detroit, and we were on a I think we were on a flight, and I was sitting down, and for some reason, because he was always up front and we weren't. This is a commercial flight. So we're in a commercial flight, and I don't know why he was walking by me, but he was walking by me and he stopped and he pointed at me and he goes, "You're going to be a coach one day, aren't you, Dave?" And I said, "I think so." "Why, Jacques?" He goes, "Because you're always questioning everything I do." So I always wondered why did not with all coaches, why did he do that? Oh, what a great idea! I never thought of that. Like why did he put this guy on the ice in this situation? Why are we playing this system? Why are we doing this? I always question things. So
Yeah.
um, I always wanted to be a coach, and when I signed the contract in Orlando, I asked Don Waddell, who was the GM at the time, and Kurt Fraser, who was the head coach at the
Yeah.
time. I said, "Would you guys? I'd like to be involved in the coaching part of it." And Kurt was very upfront. He said, "Dave," he goes, "I will definitely share with you, but we don't want to have you kind of going back and forth between." It was a piece of cake. Kurt was great,
Yeah.
and I was a player, and I was just kind of almost like a veteran guy being informed. Hey, what do you think you guys need today? Do you need a hard skate? Do you need a light skate? Just almost like a veteran player. I really was just 99.5% a player, and then just involved a little bit in what was happening behind the scenes.
If you had a time machine and could go back and talk to yourself at that point when you're kind of on the infancy of your coaching career, what would be the things you'd say, hey, Dave, like really focus on these two or three areas to maybe excel your development?
My first coaching job was with Dave Tippett in Houston.
Yeah.
We played together in Hartford, and he needed an assistant coach. We were friends. He asked me if I wanted to come to Houston. Came to Houston, showed me around. I said yes, I'll take the job. I'd love to. And there's not a lot. We had to do so much. It was just the two of us. He was GM, head coach. I was assistant coach, assistant
Yeah.
GM. We kind of did everything ourselves. Video at that time was on VHS tapes, and
Did you have like
you're going,
the stack of VCRs?
oh yeah,
Oh
oh
man.
yeah, my God. My first meeting was, it took me like 4 hours to do my first meeting. It should have taken me about, even with that system, probably about 30 minutes, but I was screwing around with it so much. But nowadays with the video, the software programs they have now for us, it's quite a bit easier. But I don't know. I mean, I learned. I don't want to say the hard way, but I was thrown into the fire as an assistant coach. I ran the D for Dave Tippett. We won a championship in our second year. He
Yeah.
went to LA immediately after that. Ron Lowe came in. I was very fortunate to work with. I think maybe one thing I would say is, don't be in a rush to maybe get to where you think
Sure.
you should
Yeah.
be or where you want to get to. Like, you don't have to be, if you want to be an NHL head coach, or if you want to be a college coach, a college head coach, you don't have to get there in 3 years. You can take 8 or 10 years and learn off a lot of guys and have great experiences. There's a lot of great experiences as assistant coach. I mean, I think it's just as rewarding as being a head coach.
Yeah.
Being an assistant coach. So I don't think you need to be in a race to get anywhere. And you can always learn. I was very fortunate to work with some real very good coaches. As a assistant on the way up, and then and in the NHL and in junior hockey, I was really lucky to work with some great people.
No, like honestly, I've got the list right here. Like, man, Todd McClellan, I believe, and were you his GM in Houston?
I was his GM in Houston. So I was. I'll go through my Houston thing here real quickly.
Yeah.
2 years with Dave Tippett. Dave Tippett left and went to LA as an assistant. Ron Lowe came in for 1 year.
Yeah.
Then Ron Lowe took the head job in New York with
Yeah.
Rangers. And then I took over as head coach GM for 1 year. And then the team became affiliated with Minnesota. So the owner asked me, he goes, Dave, would you like to be president GM and president business wise, right? And I didn't know what anything was.
Yeah.
So I said, sure. So I became president GM. I was so stressed out the first 3, 4 months. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had a very, one of the owners' right hand man, Dave Feldman, gave me he just would help me through everything. So did that. And then Todd McClellan was the head coach for 2 years. We won a championship
Yeah.
in the second year, and Minnesota was buying the team. So I was going to lose my job. So I went to golf at that time, but worked with Todd McClellan. One thing I learned about Todd, he's a great, he's very, very organized. He's a great listener. He listens to people. He knows he's a smart guy, a good coach, but he listens. He'll ask you a question, and he's not asking a question to give you his point of view at some point. He's asking you a question because he wants to hear what you have to say. He wants to see if what I'm saying is a better way, or what somebody else is saying is better, different, whatever. I really, really learned a lot from Todd. I think he's a guy that I've relied on a few times, for advice. And he's 10 years younger than I am, I think, anyways. So I've worked with some great, great people for sure.
One of the other staffs that you were on that we've worked with when you're San Jose days. So just, obviously Steve Spott and Pete DeBoer. And one thing that really struck me about that group is just, you know, getting to know you guys away from the team and just, um, all very personable. I would say kind of fun loving in a really good way. And it seemed like that personality showed up on the ice with your players. Like how there seemed to be a real togetherness. Obviously you had some big personalities in that room, and Joe Thornton, and you mentioned Brent Burns, but you know, what's the value in having chemistry within in the coaching room, and how might that influence the chemistry that shows up in the players' locker room and obviously on the ice?
I think it starts out in one thing about personality, but I think to get that cohesiveness in your locker room, in your coach's office, is Pete did a great job in laying out exactly what our jobs were. you are responsible. He would literally have a piece of paper and he would hand it to you and say, this is what you're responsible for. So we would have a meeting at the beginning of every year, and he would say, Dave Barr, you're going to be running the PK.
Yeah.
You're going to be responsible for working with forwards. You're going to be responsible post practice for conditioning, et cetera, et cetera. Any responsibilities that I had, I knew it. There wasn't any guesswork. I wasn't responsible for working on the power play. If the power play coach came to me and said, hey, Dave, what do you think about this? Obviously, I'm going to give him advice. And we would always share advice on different things, but we knew exactly what our roles were. And so there's no gray areas. That's one thing Pete did a very good job of. No gray areas. It was, here's my job. I got to get it done. And
Yeah.
he'd make sure you're doing it too. Pete could be very demanding. At the same time, he's full of common sense. We didn't have to work. We didn't have to stay in the office until 4 if we were done our work at 1:30. Just get the job done. Make sure you're ready. Make sure you're organized. Make sure you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing. And then he's got a great sense of humor. Spotter's got a real good sense of humor. We had a good group of players in there, or a good group of people in that office, all trying to accomplish the same thing. We're trying to do what we can do to win games, help players, help us win games. And at the same time, we had a lot of fun.
So, you mentioned that job description. So I'm gonna, without saying, I'm gonna assume that it's the PK. There's obviously video breakdown involved. There's some pre-scouting, like individual player meetings. Um, I would imagine that part of that maybe isn't mining the data or analytics, but it's probably, you did a presentation for us when you were in San Jose on analytics. And what's fascinating, I went back and watched, and it's like, man, that whole thing is like, that's come a long way. Um, Maybe a two-part question: is there any analytics that you still feel from kind of maybe that point in time that you still feel are super relevant today? And is there anything else that you've been introduced to that you think is as or more relevant or really important, that you need to have as a coach?
Uh, the eye test is um, really, it's very important, but the eye test doesn't always, you don't always recognize things with the eye test. I have ran the power play 6 years in the NHL and ran the penalty kill 6 years in the NHL, and you get different uh, analytics, say power play breakout.
Yeah.
And when we do this sort of a breakout, or when we enter on this side of the ice, what's our success rate in gaining, control in the offensive zone, in the offensive zone for the power play? And sometimes you just don't recognize the fact that when we go enter on the right side,
Yeah.
it's 72%. We enter on the left side, it's 51. You just have no idea. Not to say that you go, okay, we got to enter on the right side every single time, because you have to keep that other team honest. The PK a lot of times might be, forcing one way or the other. So there are reasons for it, but there's lots of reasons. I think analytics has face-offs, um, you know, right-hand face-off, or having players on their correct sides on face-offs. Todd Richards, who I worked with in Minnesota, he would put out, if the face-off was in our defensive zone on the left side, he would put out a left shot centerman
Yeah.
every single time. So the guy was always on his strong side.
Yeah.
And then his job would be to come off the ice. If his line wasn't on the ice, his job would be to come off the ice. And at the time, I was thinking, boy, that's breaking up lines. What happens if this guy gets stuck out there? Does that mean he's not going to go with his line? But now, analytically speaking, you probably have a 65% chance of winning that face-off if you're on your strong side, as opposed to losing, especially when you go up against maybe a guy who's an offensive player who's on his offside. So there's so many more reasons to use analytics to help you. And I can't see it changing. I think, I guess I would consider myself a little bit of old school coach, but at the same time, you have to, use these things to your advantage. And, I think I do. I truly a believer in it. And I think 95% of the coaches out there believe in how it can help you. And it's just a matter of how much information are you using.
Well, it's really interesting. Did you follow the NFL? Are you a football guy?
I am following it more this year. But yes, I am an analytics guy. Sorry, I am an NFL fan. I
Yeah.
just sometimes don't. I'm a Premier League fan.
Is that the towel? Is that, or sorry, not the towel, the scarf above us? Is that Tottenham?
Yes, it is. Tottenham is my son's team, and my team is Liverpool. So right above my head
That's amazing.
is the Liverpool side. We went to a Tottenham Liverpool game last year in Liverpool.
How was
So
that?
it was incredible,
Oh man,
incredible. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. My son's a big Tottenham fan, and I'm a Liverpool fan, so we made it work.
where does that come from? The
My I was a Liverpool fan when I was a kid. Liverpool was very good, and growing up in Canada, black and white TV, we'd get a English league game on
really?
every Saturday morning, and so I used to watch and cheer for Liverpool.
Yeah.
And my son learned that my grandfather, who was born in London, was a Tottenham fan. And he said, "I'm a Tottenham fan, Dad. Who do you got?" And I said, and I wasn't really following football or soccer that closely. I said, "I got Liverpool." So ever since then, this is probably 8, 10 years now,
No
we're
kidding.
following closely together. I actually got underneath this. I think I do. Hopefully, I have a shirt on.
Yeah.
It's a anyways, there's a Liverpool crest on the side here, so I have a lot of fun with it. It's a nice diversion for me.
I bet. I bet. That's I've become a huge fan of the Amazon series that they do on the Premier League clubs, and just obviously it's yeah, such a
It's incredible, so
yeah,
fun. The behind the scenes stuff is so cool.
it's
You can
amazing.
always learn. Like I learn from the coaches all the time.
I bet. Have you had it? Like, you've been in some major markets. Have you had an opportunity to cross paths with any coaches that maybe you still keep in touch with from other sports, or just maybe any like kind of key learning opportunities?
We when I was in Minnesota, our PR guy knew the Vikings PR guy, and so he asked us. It was like second or third week of training camp in
Yeah,
for the Vikings.
yeah,
He said, "Do you guys want to go?" And we said, "God, we'd love to." So I think it was a Monday, and they played. It was a Tuesday. They played Saturday or Sunday,
yeah.
and then they had an exhibition game Thursday. So this was 2 days before the exhibition game Thursday, and so we got there in the morning. We watched their main meeting to start the morning. We watched their
Like
special
right in the
teams.
meeting.
We were right in the middle of it,
Wow.
right in the middle. We sat it right in there. Guys would give us the "What the hell are these guys doing in here?" Type of look. But we were in the back out of the way. But we were in the meeting. Kind of a neat story. We're in the meeting, and it's the main meeting now. There's a main meeting at like 11, and there's this one prime seat that nobody's sitting in. And it's like guys are filing in. It's training camp, so there's a lot of players, maybe 75, I'm
Yeah.
guessing. And so this prime seat, perfect seat, best seat to see the where the coaches are talking. And it's sat empty, and we're kind of like, why isn't anybody sitting? They're almost avoiding the seat. It's on the aisle, right in the middle. So then Brett Favre walks in,
No
and he
kidding.
goes right to that seat, and he was one of the last guys to sit down. So obviously that was his seat, and nobody was going to take it from him. But
They
we
knew.
sat in through all the meetings, the special teams meeting. We sat with the GM. I can't remember the GM's name. I was a super nice guy. I sat in with him for like 2 hours, and he would talk about how they do things, how they rate players, how they draft
No kidding.
current players, how they. Oh, it was so much fun. And then we went out in the field and watched them practice, and it was really cool because you think of football players being huge. Well, they have a bunch of, and they have running backs now. They're small.
Yeah.
They're strong, but they're 5'8", type small. So it was really neat seeing different sizes. You see the big, huge guys. They're 6'5", 330. You're like, wow, would not want to be hit by that. And but it was a great experience.
Yeah,
Haven't never caught up with the coaches again, but we learned a lot. It was really neat how they organized things.
I was gonna say I've had a chance to observe some of those, and that's what stood out to me. And I mean, obviously, you mentioned like there's a ton of players and moving parts, but they have it going like clockwork. It's incredible. And actually, just on that note, I want to finish my thought on. I was going to bring up about analytics. So, well, I mean, Travis Kelsey is a bit of a celebrity right now because he's apparently dating Taylor Swift. But him and his brother Jason, center for the Philadelphia Eagles, they have a podcast. It's the number one podcast, I think, like anywhere, like on any industry. But what's interesting, I've just got turned on to it. But they'll talk to each other about plays, and Jason, who's the center, who's kind of like the general out there, he'll be like, works that play works 92% of the time. We knew that
Oh
play would work because
wow!
we were, and I heard that, and I'm like, man, like, and it just, when you talked about like, entries on the power play, like the left or right side, I'm like, just a great example that, if those players know that, hey, when we do it this way, it's really successful. Like, how much more confidence are you instilling just by arming the players with that information? And I am sure that applies just as much to their own individual game as much as it does to the team game. It's fascinating.
Oh, for sure. It develops a buy-in, and then the players will take pride in it. Maybe not something right left type thing, but when we do this, guys, when we have a forecheck with a good dump, or when we do this on our rush, and we have middle lane drive or whatever it is that keys that makes that rush successful, you gain puck possession in the offensive zone. Guys will take pride in it. I mean, everybody wants the puck in the offensive zone, so they'll work at it hard. Especially when you show them some video and maybe the numbers behind it, going, guys, this isn't just us remembering it; it's working. Here's the analytics to support that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got a couple before we let you go, Dave, if that's okay. As I mentioned, I was rewatching, the presentations that you did for us. And one thing that stood out to me is you mentioned that when you were with Canada's U18 team, that Andre Tournier was, I think, effectively in a mentorship role, or a resource for you. And one thing that I've really come to appreciate, like, nobody gets to um, experience the things that you've experienced as a coach without, constantly being in the process of collecting new information and being open to ideas and mentorship. And I'd just be curious to know, what would, if you could take us into one of those conversations that you might have had with Andre at that time. What sort of, what kind of information was he giving you, but also what sort of information or questions would you be putting in front of him?
The one thing well, there's a few things, because the first thing you think about is larger ice, bigger ice, right?
Yeah.
International game and bigger ice. Although ours ended up being on regular size ice because it was in Dallas. But that was my first question was, about larger ice. Is the game much different? And coaching in Vienna the last 2 years on bigger ice, game's not a lot different. It's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
You have a little bit more time in the offensive zone, or you have a little bit more time with the puck in general, but it really is not that different. But the one thing he said to me, and this is the huge part of my sell, the one thing I did was, he said, you're not going to have a lot of time, especially in the circumstances that we had there, where we were having Zoom meetings, Zoom workouts and Zoom hockey meetings, and he goes, you're not going to have a lot of time, so pick your three most important systems and do that the vast majority of the time. So I picked tracking, uh, D-zone coverage, and breakouts. So those are the three that I picked that we put a lot of time into. So what I was talking about earlier with
Yeah.
you was, I would show tracking being successful. Successful didn't always mean like we're stripping a puck in the neutral zone, but it might be we forced a guy to make a chip that our other defenseman went and got, and we broke out with it because we were organized on our breakouts. And so I would show us having success with those three systems. Most importantly, I wanted to get the puck out of our zone. I didn't want the puck to be in our zone. So that's why we focused on those three. That was probably the biggest thing he said in a tournament, because if you try to get every single detail right with 8 systems, and 4 more philosophies or
Yeah,
8 more philosophies. He goes, you're going to be just swimming. What am I supposed to do here? Too late. Now you've missed what you should have been doing because you were thinking. Got to trust the guys to be
great
able to do
advice. Yeah,
something on their own. So we tried to keep it as simple as we could, tried to keep the systems detailed, but kind of not overly done. We trusted them to make plays and so forth. So it worked out very well. We won gold. Great game against Russia in the finals.
yeah,
It was a lot of fun, a great experience.
very cool. Um, Last year in the NHL playoffs, and not that I didn't appreciate him as a player, but I think my biggest takeaway was, man, like Joe Pavelski is pretty special, and just in terms of how he plays the game. You spend a lot of time with him, and I'm probably asking a little bit selfishly here, but just wondering if you have any anecdotes or stories about Joe and just maybe that illustrate his commitment to the game and his craft.
Uh, coaches, coaches, 3 of the coaches lived in a house that we rented in Joe's neighborhood.
Yeah,
Uh, so my first year, 3 of us all lived in a house together. It was a lot of fun. We had a
that's a
nice
whole
house,
nother podcast. Yeah,
that actually we could turn that into a 5-hour
I
podcast.
bet you could.
But the reason why I brought that up is he was probably 2 blocks away,
Yeah,
and I think the number one thing about Joe is he's got a heck of a lot of respect from his teammates, from the coaching staff, from management, just because of the way he carries himself.
yeah,
He's a fantastic father. He's a wonderful, great husband. As far as sure. I was going to say as far as we know. I know he is.
yeah,
I know he's a great husband, good man, and he brings that into the dressing room. That calmness.
yeah,
He cares, and the one thing with him is you watch him. He's an average skater, but he works on his game, and he is so strong on the puck. Not a big guy. He's 5'10", maybe 180, 185. So strong on the puck because he wants it. As he's gotten older, you tend to get slower, and he was never, a speedster. But he knows where to go, and when he gets to where he wants to go, he gets the job done. He's just a wonderful, wonderful leader. It was a very good signing by Dallas, and they've now learned that for sure.
Well, and I should have had. I think part of that admiration was just the fact that he's just a few years younger than me, and I watch what he does and just the price he pays, and I'm like, geez, like there's like, I don't think I know that I don't have that gusto anymore, and so yeah, credit to him for for still obviously having a real passion for the game. Dave, I just checked as we sign off here. I just checked the English Premier League standings. Your boys in Liverpool are on a 3-game heater right now. But more importantly, they are 4 notches above Tottenham. So you still got some bragging rights.
I do. My son and I think they actually play the game today, and there's a league, one of those leagues they have. I should know it, but I'm not. It was 1-1 last time I saw it. I'll have to look that one up when I get done here.
Well, we'll let you get back to it. Well, hey, man, we really appreciate you joining us and just all the contributions you've made to the coaches site, our community, and giving back. And best of luck this season in Chicago.
My pleasure, and you guys do a fantastic job. I look at your stuff all the time, and you provide a great great stuff for all the coaches out there. Great information, lots of teaching. So I continue with the good work that you're doing, Aaron. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks, Dave.